Hey guys, Sturgeon here. Today I'm bringing you a quick guide to give you the basic information you need to start playing Immortal Gates of Pyre. The first thing you need to do is choose one of these factions. Right now we have the Krath, which are the Angelic Empire, the Aru, which are the Root Witches, and Jura, the Iron Republic, which are not yet in the game. So the first playable faction is the Krath, who are the Angelic Empire. And this faction has really high HP units. They're very tanky, and they have shields, and they can heal, and they're really good in direct fights. As you get later into the game, they have access to these big capital ships with huge damage, as well as some really powerful spellcasters. You can see these units here. This faction loves to just fight straight up and win with their superior army. The second playable faction are the Aru, the Root Witches. In comparison to the Krath, these units aren't quite as tanky and high HP. They don't have as good a front line, but they are more nimble and agile and good at skirmishing and running around the map, backstabbing, causing economic damage, and just causing chaos on the map. In appearance, they're kind of Zerg-like in a way, and this faction also has Root, which is similar to Creep in that you can only build your buildings on Root apart from your expansions. As the game goes on, they get access to some units which can debuff the enemy, as well as spawner units, and they have casters which are really strong. And the interesting thing about their casters is not only do they have a mana pool, but once they run out of mana, they can actually use their health to cast spells. And then they can build a building called a blood well, which makes a big ring, and if they stand in that ring, they regenerate their health. So they can also cast spells in that way. In addition to picking a faction, you also have to choose an Immortal for that faction. Now, for the Krath, we have two playable Immortals currently. We have Ajari and Awesome. And for the Aru, we have Mala and Zol. And each Immortal that you can choose changes the way the faction plays by a lot. So what exactly do the Immortals do? Well, they're kind of like these hero units for each faction, and the first big impact they have is that choosing a different Immortal will give you two different Vanguard units. And these Vanguard units are units which replace the basic units in the Krath or Aru army with these special units unique to each Immortal. In addition to that, each Immortal also gives you access to a lot of spells. Each Immortal has one passive spell. Like for example, Zol's passive gives +1 vision range to all her troops. And then you have 4 spells and an ultimate spell as well, which takes a lot more Pyre to cast, which we'll get into later. So just to give a quick breakdown of the different Immortals, the first one we have is Awesome. And this is an Immortal that excels at kind of controlling space and fortifying an area on the map. His passive executes enemy towers below 20%, so they just get destroyed. His first ability summons a tower. His second ability reduces incoming damage on towers and then will heal the structure for 50% of their shield and life. He does also have an offensive ability, Pillar of the Heavens, which causes this pillar to crash down and do damage to enemy units while buffing your units. And then finally, he can summon a rook at a target location. The next Krath Immortal is Ajari, who excels at kind of saving units and buffing them, giving them defensive buffs. If you look at her abilities, the first one is units entering hallowed ground, which is an area around the Krath buildings, will get a burst of healing and heal slowly over time. Q summons a tower, same as Awesome. W shields a target and gives them a lot of movement speed, so this is really good to cast on your melee front line to chase down the enemy. E will give shields to your units and then teleport them away to the closest town hall, so if you take a bad fight you can just get out of there. And then her kind of ultimate ability, Salvation, will save any unit that dies for 20 seconds and they get teleported to her and they respawn with 25% life. So she's very good at like saving units, shielding them, buffing them like that. Moving on to the Aru Immortals, the first one is Mala, who's the Prophet of Blood. Her whole concept is basically using blood for abilities. Her passive, you get Exalted Blood when units die near a blood well. A Q creates a tower, same as the others. A W summons Marla, and units that die near her spawn Quittle, these little spawnable units. They're very small. And they also give blood. Her E enhances her warriors by spending blood. And her R is Rain of Blood, which basically covers the map in blood. It all falls from the sky for 30 seconds. And it increases the life and mana regeneration of her units. And then finally, she can also summon a Blood Well, which summons this root around the structure, and any units in this ring will regenerate HP. Okay, next let's talk about the economy in Immortal. So there are 3 resources. First of all, there's alloy, which is basically the minerals of the game. This is what you use to create all your tier 1 units and your production structures. They only cost alloy at tier 1, and it's mined here by these workers. Next we have the ether, which is basically gas if you're from StarCraft. And this gives you access to all the higher tech units, the upgrades, going to tier 2, etc. And then finally there's Pyre, a third resource, which is used to cast your immortal powers. So if you bring up the Immortal menu, you can see at the top right that each of them cost a certain amount of Pyre. So you need to go out on the map and collect Pyre to be able to use your Immortals abilities. Now, as far as workers go, you don't need to sit there and create workers like you do in other RTS titles. The game will actually automatically build workers for you until your base is saturated, until your alloy mine is saturated here. If a worker dies, it will be replaced, and it won't overmake workers. So this is how you collect alloy. For the ether, you have to go ahead and create the ether more, which you can place on these ether things here, and once it's built, it will give you this ether income. You can also get ether by using this ability on the town hall called Ether Surge, which mines ether from a nearby rift, and it costs you 50 alloy. You can also switch the ether mines, the ether mores, to harvest alloy. So you can actually choose if these get ether or alloy. You have to keep in mind, if you choose alloy, it will be much less efficient than if they harvest ether. They collect alloy at a much slower rate. Once you go ahead and expand, you start the base with only half the workers. So you start this base with only 4 workers, and instead of individually creating them, you can use the upgrade mining to level 2 button, and this will go ahead and make the base create another 4 workers, and to bring you up to maximum mining on this base. Another cool feature is that if you are to drag your workers away from mining and they are idle, after a certain amount of time they will go back to mining automatically. So if you are harassed and you drag them away, after a certain amount of time you'll see that they'll actually go back to the alloy and start working again without you telling them to do it. Okay, so we know that we need Pyre to use our Immortals abilities, but how do you actually gather Pyre? Well, first of all, it will tick up on its own slowly over time, so you'll always get some kind of passive Pyre income. The next way is to kill these ruined emplacements, and these don't fight back. You can just kill them with any number of units without having to worry about your units dying, and they will go ahead and give you 10 Pyre. You can also find these camps on the map, which do have creeps on them, and if you go ahead and kill these creeps, you will get some Pyre afterwards. You see here, I take out all the creeps, and then there's this Pyre. You pick it up, you get 25 burst Pyre. Another source of Pyre are these towers with creeps, which you can find on the map. If you kill these, you will get a slow trickle of Pyre from them, and you also get control of this tower, which will attack enemies. So here you can see the Pyre ticking up over time. Okay, next let's talk about the production in Immortal. So, different to other games, you don't need to make supply depots, houses, or overlords. The production structures themselves actually give supply in Immortal. And each building, it doesn't matter whether it's the tier 1 building or a high-tech building that produces air units, each building will give you 16 supply, which means you need 15 supply production structures to get the maximum population cap. Also, each production building can make up to 10 supply of units at once. So if you look at the Bone Stalker, you can see it's 2 supply, which means that I can make 5 of them simultaneously. There's no queuing units in this game. You can just make up to 10 supply of any unit at the same time. Also, I should mention that the supply is shown down here in the population bar underneath the resources. Now we know how the production works, let's take a look at how to actually build things in Immortal. So the first thing you can see if you look down here on the UI is that you have a train, tech, build, and power button down here. If you want to build buildings, you can simply press C, select the building that you want to build. Let's say I want to make an Altar of the Worthy. Hit W or the corresponding hotkey, place it, and the game will grab a worker automatically and place the building. So I can just press W click, W click, W click, and the game will send workers, the closest workers available, and make the building automatically like that. If you look down here in the build menu, you can see the production structures here that you can make, and above that you have the advanced production structures, which give you access to high attack, your upgrades, attack and defense. They give 10% for each to all units. You can get a tower, these kind of things. So these give you access to your like high-tech upgrades and units as well. To access these, you simply press space and then press the corresponding hotkey. So if I just press W, I get the Altar of the Worthy. But if I hold space and then press W, I'll make the Murder Hollow, which, as you can see, allows me to unlock Icor's training as well as the research for them, their upgrades. Moving on to actually making units, you can still do it the old-fashioned way, as it were. Hotkey your production structures and just click the unit that you want to make, or use the hotkey W. But in Immortal, there's also another a kind of an easier way to do it. You can go to the Train tab, and the Train tab will show you all the units that you can currently build. The basic units are displayed down here at the bottom. And again, if you hold space, you can go up to the advanced section where you can make your advanced high-tech units. So you don't need to hotkey all your production structures if you don't want to. Similarly, for upgrades, you don't need to hotkey the structures to upgrade your units. You can simply go to the tech button, click it. On the bottom, it will display any upgrades you have available for basic units. And if you hold space, you can select upgrades for your advanced units as well. The ones that are grayed out mean they're not yet available, and it will tell you what you require in order to get that upgrade at the bottom. But the ones that are colored in, you can click them or you press the hotkey and it will start upgrading them without you needing to hotkey the upgrade structure. And just to quickly cover the rest of the UI, if you see here, we have the power button. This is where you can access your Immortals, spells, and abilities. You have the army button. This is the select all army. By default, it's D, but I've changed it to 1. If you press this, it will select all your units. Pretty basic. And then finally, you have the ops button here, which is caps lock. And if you press caps lock, it will show you and your Immortal. And if you're in a real game, it will also show your opponent as well. So if you need to check what Immortal your opponent has, you can open up this Ops tab with Control to see what they have. It also shows what upgrades they have as well, and what upgrades you have. So this is kind of your intel panel, and it's pretty useful. Another thing to mention is if you want to see the stats for your unit, you can simply click it, and it will bring up the unit information panel down here. The unit name, what kind of unit it is, what it can attack, what its damage is versus certain armor types, as well as the range and attack per second, the armor type that you have. You can check the bonuses on the website, as well as the speed and HP of your unit. Also, just to quickly go over the hotkeys in this game, because they're very different to traditional Blizzard RTS games. By default, the button to make control groups is space, which if you're used to StarCraft 2 or Warcraft 3, etc., might be off-putting for you, so you may wish to change this to control. If you're new to like RTS games in general, you can just go ahead and use the setup they've got here. But if you're like a veteran of 20 years and you can't change your old ways, you know, you can't learn new tricks, then You might want to go ahead and change this. Also, the camera locations by default, I've changed mine to just kind of StarCraft 2 standard, F1 to F8. You may wish to change this as well, it's up to you. And you also need a modifier for jump to camera and set camera as well. So just something to keep in mind that the hotkeys for this game are very different to StarCraft and Warcraft, etc. So you may wish to take a look at this before you start playing as well. The last thing I'd like to do is just kind of give a shout out to the amazing educational resources in this game. If you go to their website, sunspeargames.com, you can see overviews for each faction, as I showed before. You can see information for each Immortal and how it changes your Vanguard units, which units each faction has, the structures, and you can also see information about the individual Immortals. If you click here, you have all their abilities pop up, as well as the info on their Vanguard units. If you go in game, there's even more. There's this play tab, and then next to it you have the learn tab, and this is just awesome. It shows you all the default controls, how to do stuff. It shows you kind of the UI. This awareness panel explains the resources. And then this is probably the most useful thing. You can see the tech tree for each Immortal. So say you're playing Ajari, you can go ahead and see which of your units have changed. You can see your abilities, including videos, which is super useful to see what the abilities actually do. You can see the tech tree. And for example, if you hover over something, the game will actually tell you what you need to be able to make that unit. So if I like hover over the Sentinel, for example, you can see the glowing buildings. They represent all the buildings that I need to make this unit. So I need my Acropolis, I need a Legion Hall, I need the Monastery, I need the Requillery, I need the Soul Foundry, and then I need the Angelarium. However you say that. But it's pretty cool. You can just hover over each unit. Same with the Aru, hover over each unit, and it will tell you the tech path to get to that unit. So this is a really good resource. You can also see all the roles in the game. If you remember the unit panel, just hit my microphone. If you remember the unit panel, you could see the roles. This kind of explains all the roles as well as the icons for them, so you know what to look out for. Okay guys, that just about sums it up. That's as much info as I can get in this video without it being ridiculously long, but hopefully this is a good kind of foundation for you guys to just be able to jump into the game and know what's going on. But when I started, I found it a little bit difficult to kind of get used to stuff and figure out what was going on. So I really hope this helps some of you guys. Thank you for watching, and best of luck playing the game. See you later.